we may want to pause and check on opportunities where we can be intentional about leveraging neuroplasticity
Hmm.
so that over time we help ourselves grow even more.
Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode. I am so grateful to be here on another episode and so grateful for you as my listeners because, as you know, without you, there is no podcast. So today is a very special episode. It's a very special guest. I have the pleasure, and this is I've always said like one of the reasons I really love podcasting is because I have the pleasure of meeting people that I would normally never get to meet or even talk to. Some of the most amazing people, and I get to have some of the most amazing conversations. And with people from around the world. And so this is what makes today's guest so exciting for me. She is a sister that I actually connected with on the very LinkedIn. And we have very similar values and a similar background. And we met on a Zoom and had an amazing conversation. And I said, you know what? I have to have you on my podcast. And we're going to be talking about the knowing doing gap. And as you all know, if you listen to me, if you've heard me speak, this is one of those topics I really love. And so, this sister right here, who is a social entrepreneur and a clinical psychologist, her name is Kgomotso Sekhute, and she is coming to us, hailing to us from South Africa. And I am so excited about that. She is the owner of Pen Logic, subsidiary being Bionics for Africa Healthcare. And her zone of genius is connecting with people and writing and storytelling. And so I'm so excited to have her here to have this conversation. We like to have these sort of coffee conversations. And I look forward to what it's going to bring. So welcome, Kgomotso, to the show. How are you?
Hello, Dr. Maisha. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's such a privilege to join you. I really appreciate you.
Yes, I'm excited. You're such a wonderful spirit. And I'm just looking forward to not only this conversation, but all the conversations that are coming after this for us and how we continue to grow. So,
Absolutely.
I really love for our audience to get to know our guests. So, will you just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your expertise, about your background, and how you came to do what you do?
Sure, thank you. So I am first off a first child at home from a very humble background of two very loving parents who were visionaries, who instilled a very solid set of core values in my brother and I,
Mm,
where we were raised to believe that everyone is equal in front of God,
mhm,
no matter how successful you get in
mhm,
life. That
mhm,
was the number one golden rule at home. So that's top in my core. So professionally, I qualified as a clinical psychologist in my mid 20s, then progressed to work in corporates right up until to where I am today. Along the way, I did many other things like several entrepreneurial ventures and
mm.
programs, as well as a formal coaching program. Yeah, so that's me on a professional level. And then as a person, I am a grandma and mom to girls.
Yes. Yes. Well, at the time of this recording, I can say happy belated Mother's Day.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Happy belated to you too, Aisha.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
it's such a, a journey being a parent. And I, I can't, I had my son a little bit later. So I have many friends of mine who are grandparents, and I'm still in the young child raising stage.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's a fun time. It's a fun time. You know,
absolutely.
I love this topic, the knowing doing gap, because one of the things that we have talked about is this place where knowledge, there's a saying, knowledge is power. And I think that's very limited. Knowledge is power only so much as we actually apply the knowledge in action. And so this idea of the knowing and doing gap is a place where is that's not really being addressed because people are valuing the knowledge over the action. And oftentimes there is something missing in between. So in
Yeah.
terms of like how when you work with organizations and when you work with people, what are you discovering about that knowledge gap, that knowledge to doing gap?
So I love what you say about the disconnect that exists between when we know a lot,
Mhm.
yet are not able to apply the insights and wisdom that comes from the collective knowledge of whatever it is we've acquired over time.
Yeah.
So I'm discovering very fascinating things that we all have the muscle
Mhm.
to unlearn and close that gap.
Mhm.
And that's the first big one. The second one is that there are several things that may hold us back and make it difficult to apply what we know. So, starting with beliefs, there might be self limiting beliefs that get in the way from time to time.
Mhm.
The second driver or barrier to us executing what we know might be our thinking patterns
Mhm.
associated with our mindset.
Mhm.
Then we also find, if we are very honest with ourselves, sometimes we have just acquired habits that may have served us well in the past, but
Mhm.
now get in the way. So, in that category, might be things like ill discipline, failing to hold ourselves and our teams and peers and clients accountable,
Mhm.
where we get very tolerant of sometimes mediocrity,
Oof, girl,
which
speak
may
that.
even go into the leadership space, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things that I'm discovering.
Mhm.
What gives me hope is that I've seen that we can all relate, whether we take lessons from our personal lives
Mhm.
or from the teams we are part of and those that we lead, or even from role models and people that we learn from and read about. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's all part of the human struggle.
Yeah.
None of us are perfect.
Yes. I love that. I mean, I want to go into I'm taking notes over here, right? And because you're speaking my language. I love, love, love all of these things, this breakdown. And I want to start with the things that the sort of the beliefs and maybe the thing we have that muscle, but maybe there are some beliefs that get in our way. And to touch on the fact that some of those beliefs not only are inherited, but some of them come from like the traumas that we have experienced. And
Mm.
so, we have this intensity of experience or this that may land as trauma, then it sort of reframes like how we think about things. It impacts our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about others, our beliefs about our safety, our beliefs about our capacity, and all of these things. And so, what are some of the beliefs that you're coming across that can impact this knowing to doing gap, particularly in the spaces that you're in?
That's so powerful, Maisha. So I've got two settings that I navigate.
Mhm.
In corporate settings, there's a constellation of what we get told that organizations are about.
Mm,
So, depending on the kind of narrative that is dominant where you are, where you live and work,
mhm,
we might already enter those spaces from a place of being defensive.
mhm,
And I'll use simple examples, where if we are bringing in beliefs such as you're going to work to perform, not to make friends,
mm,
or corporates are not safe, whatever the narrative might be.
yeah,
Imagine how much work that already creates before you even meet people, get to know them, connect with them, trust,
mhm,
and getting vulnerable becomes even
mhm,
unimaginable.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
those may come from trauma, like you have said.
mhm,
So, if in our past we worked in places where we always had to be on guard, or where for one reason or another, the team health or the values and how they were practiced in those teams was not quite okay.
mhm, mhm,
If we do not resolve that trauma, we may carry it wherever we go.
yeah,
So that's one side in the
yeah,
corporate spaces. I think there might also be remnants of the intersection of socio-cultural beliefs
yeah,
that we carry with into workplaces. Because
mhm,
remember, we bring our whole beings
that's
into
right,
workplaces.
that's right,
So that might get in the way, sometimes in a positive way, other times not.
mhm, mhm,
Um, so I've seen where I was deliberate with mentioning my position at home so that those who are not first children can also learn from their own experiences. So other people will say, as a middle child in a large family, I was always forgotten, not seen, and whatever. Others
mhm,
might say, as the youngest one, I was always babied right up to my adulthood, and my
mhm,
mission is to rebel and grow and find space,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it could be things like those,
mhm,
that's in the corporate space. In the personal mastery and self leadership space, we then meet issues of identity, issues
mhm,
of connection, love, abandonment.
yeah,
If those were not resolved, they may follow us into adulthood, where if we walk around with the view that says the world is a safe space, it takes off a lot of trauma. And we
mhm,
can connect with people without feeling like we have to watch our back. The
mhm,
opposite might also apply.
yeah. I love that you brought that in because I don't think a lot of in the leadership space that gets addressed. I think that, and especially, here in the US, we don't talk about feelings. We don't talk about, like that doesn't, that's sort of the mindset, right? The belief system of, oh,
Mm,
well, it's shifting and it's changing, I will say, because I definitely am hearing more about emotional intelligence and leadership and actually doing more talks and workshops on that. So I think there's beginning to be a shift. But historically, emotions and workplace were like not a thing that coexist, right? It's all logic and decision making and emotionless and leave your emotions out of it. And that comes from really a particular mindset. And so recognizing for leaders to recognize that when you bring yourself, you bring your whole self, and that includes all of the traumas and the unresolved wounds that you have. And then you bring that into your leadership, and then you basically infringe those wounds on others, and
mm,
it's not healthy to lead from those wounds. So I appreciate you bringing, especially like this sort of abandonment and you know um, the sometimes it's competition, or sometimes it's, I've always been seen and not heard and forgotten. And so that my goal is to now be seen and heard. And then that gives a particular personality of communication, or not personality, but a style of communication, right? It gives an underpinning of a space that a person brings. So that's really interesting. And then it kind of starts to speak to mindset as well.
Mm.
Like, I think there's an interconnection inside of that beliefs and that mindset. And what oh, I was thinking about something else, but I'm going to tie it in. I was thinking about this birth order, but it brings me to like this growth mindset versus fixed mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and how I'm thinking about generations, and how
Yeah.
things are very different between generations. And why that's popping up in my head right now is because I actually just had a conversation with someone who is she's going into a new organization, and she's joining a team as a high level leader, where she's the
Mm.
youngest and the
Yeah.
newest. And we were just talking about those dynamics between generations, and how that, if you have sort of this fixed mindset, and I think what I've seen, I should say, is older generations, at least over here, like our generations of baby boomers, tend to have a more fixed mindset. And some of our Generation X too. I will claim that. I think there's a lot more Generation X that are starting to adopt more growth mindset. And then our
Mm.
younger, like our millennials and our Gen Zs, they are really flexible right now and really leaning into that growth mindset. Although there is some fixedness about their opinions about older
Mm-hmm.
generations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like,
Yeah.
the mindset, this growth versus fixed inside of our own belief systems, if we layer that in, that can give some complicated dynamics.
It does. It does. It does.
Mhm.
I love how you unpack it because it also speaks to the concept of attachment, how
Mhm.
much we attach to certain things. In
Mhm.
this case, it might be how attached we are to a certain mindset may trip us up,
Mhm.
whereas
Mhm.
those things that we hold very lightly in life,
Mhm.
we can learn, unlearn, adjust, watch for feedback, amend as we go. You
Right.
know, another thing that comes into play there, and this I found in some of my coach learning and experiences. When we say I am, we are creating very strong pathways neurologically,
Mhm.
because then
Mhm.
it drops into our identity.
Mhm.
So some of the work we do with ourselves and with leaders is to start helping them hold things quite lightly,
Mhm.
break invisible boxes where we might have locked ourselves in, to check every time and sometimes tease when someone says, I am, and then we can play around with it and say, yes, you are. What else are you? Is that all
Mm.
that you are?
Mhm. Mhm.
What other identities would you like to start experimenting with?
Yes.
What other leadership styles would you like to start experimenting with? Because if I say I'm a very strict leader,
Mhm.
imagine how many doors I close with just the
Mhm.
truth.
Mhm. Yes.
As opposed to if I say, as a leader, I'm a work in progress. I
Yes.
am learning. There's things I get wrong. There's things that I can work on like everybody else, which
Mhm.
then enables that leader to create a safe culture where
Yeah.
people know, They don't have to know everything. They can make mistakes. They can learn and unlearn. It's work in progress, which is that growth mindset that goes
Yes.
with the lifelong learner mindset.
Right. Oh my gosh. When you said, "Is that all that you are?" And what else would you like to explore, being? And that is
Mm,
so powerful. I have to underline that, right? So when we say I am, we're creating these deep neurological pathways. And to be able to play with that, it's the question is that all that you are? And what else would you like to explore? Who else would you like to explore being, or what other styles would you like to explore? Or
mm,
who else are you? Like, what else is there about you? I love
mhm,
that. And that is just such a powerful gem that you just gave the audience. So y'all better be listening. Y'all better pause this, bookmark this, rewind this, play it again, because that question right there for the I am, for self and for others. Well, I'm just that way. Well, is that all you are? Right? Because how often do we hear people say that? And in terms of this like knowing, doing gap, believing that we're just one way or we are just one
mhm,
thing is a
mm.
huge contributor. That's part of that fixedness. It's a huge
Yeah,
contributor because if you think that you're just one way and there's something over there that you want to do, but you're just one way, you might think that you cannot achieve or do that thing because you're just this one way. You're just this one thing. And so I just love how you tied that in. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Uh,
thank you.
wow. The other thing that occurs to me as we talk about this knowing, doing, and I'm thinking about the I am is the fear that can come with letting go of identity, right?
Mhm, mm,
If I am not, then who am I? And the uncertainty of not knowing oneself or not knowing one's identity is taken as sort of a negative, as opposed to, well, if I am not this, who can I create myself to be?
yeah,
Which give you a
yeah.
pathway to doing, to exploration, and to what you said, playing. I mean, that is so powerful.
It speaks to who we are becoming every single day,
Yes.
leveraging what we learned from our
Mhm,
past, our grandparents, our important people in our lives. Each one of them has woven things into our psyche,
mhm.
both positive and not so helpful at times.
True.
So you will know this from our common background in neuro-linguistic programming that there's a lot of voices we might need to mute from time to
Mhm,
time, and there's some voices we need to amplify.
mhm,
So to link it to the knowing doing gap, every time that I don't feel like doing some of my motherly duties, in those moments, I amplify my grandmother's voice in my
mhm,
head
mhm.
because then it will just get me going. If I was
Yes.
lazing around and not doing the right thing, I'll hear her say, girls, don't sleep past sunshine or whatever the story was. you know
Yeah.
so yeah, there's places like those where we can also go to either amplify or mute certain things that are no longer
I think
serving.
that's such a wonderful visual to amplify or to mute certain voices because, depending on how you were raised, there may be a lot of voices from your family of origin that you need to turn down and you need to mute altogether. Whereas there
Mm,
may be voices from your community, or as we say, family of choice, that you
mhm,
want to
mhm.
amplify, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
even in, the present, whether you're muting past voices or you're muting present voices, maybe you're speaking, you have a family member who's in a fixed mindset, but you love that person. And so you're going
Mm,
to communicate with them. And
mm,
they may say things that you can hold lightly and maybe turn the volume down on the stickiness of those.
mhm.
Whereas you have a colleague or an accountability partner who is always reminding you of your true self and capability and really empowering you. And then you can
Yeah.
lean into that and amplify that stickiness, right? And so I just love that visual of the dial of turning it down or turning it up or muting it all together. It's super powerful. Yeah. And I
I
think it
must
does.
say,
Go ahead.
sorry, I must say that's what I learned from the young ones, the Gen Zs and other youngsters. They are our greatest teachers because they talk a
Mhm,
lot about, you know, and I hear this a lot in the therapy work that I do with
mhm.
teens. They would say, when it gets overwhelming, I've learned to mute certain voices at home.
Mhm.
And when I need them, I can up the volume or I can, you know, put a lot of color, a lot of effects. And that's how I navigate my world.
That's
So
powerful.
there's lots to learn from the multiple generations too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have to, sort of be willing to open our minds and recognize that. Yeah. Yeah. Love
Indeed.
that.
Indeed.
Love that. Well, the other thing I want to talk about is because I think this also speaks to this gap is the habits and I'm going to add a layer to that, the skill sets. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
that, and one of the things I find particularly in communication is that there are things that I know for myself having studied language like yourself and having studied, having had a background studying trauma and all these things that I know that I take for granted that maybe other people don't necessarily have in their toolbox. And so not having the tools in the toolbox to navigate the bridge between the knowing and doing
Mm,
is a huge thing. And not even, and sometimes not having the skill sets to either shift or form the habit that needs to be
mm.
formed in order to keep it going. So maybe they know what to do, but they don't know how to create it as a consistency. Or
Yeah.
maybe they just don't know how to do it at all. And I think that is a huge gap, I think, especially when it comes to communication.
It's a huge one. It's a huge one. So some of the practical things we learn that play a role either in workplaces and teams or even in our home relationships may be as simple as how we communicate gets influenced by generalizations we make,
Mhm.
phrases we use.
Mhm.
It might be how we may have learned to put our points across, where something as simple as you always da da da. So when we break it down to a structure level, we can teach and learn a new way of communicating,
Yeah.
where we bridge the gap between I'm assertive, I tell it like it is,
Mhm.
as well as navigating the real impact of if I were the other person listening to me, how might it land?
Mhm.
What's my responsibility as the one relaying the message to do it
Mhm.
in a way that shows my compassion, that
Yeah.
doesn't trigger them into defense,
Mhm.
that keeps the conversation going as opposed to shutting them down.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learning for all of us. And I
Yeah.
think back to the mindset one, for as long as we tell ourselves, I'm constantly learning and unlearning, it keeps us safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's just so powerful, this space of the communication habits. And one of the things that I think that also doesn't get talked about in spaces of communication is how we listen, the habit of our listening and the habit of our emotional regulation. And I
Mm.
think one of the most challenging could be that regulation, the practice of that regulation, because our emotions, it's that kinesthetic feeling can get so strong when we hear something that maybe doesn't sit well, or maybe that we hear something that it's like overly excites us and we want to like jump in there and we're motivated. We want to jump in there, but like to regulate and to continue to
Mm.
listen and to build that habit, that muscle of listening, as you say, like, how does this land for another? Navigating and understanding our nonverbal communications are just as important as our verbal communications. In fact, more so because, as you know, 7% of communications is words and 93% is everything else. And so when we really
Yeah.
recognize that and we start to like navigate this world, this dance of communication and listening and self-regulating, and I think that's a very critical habit to develop inside of communication. And again, the tools, like coming back to the skill sets and the tools, and keeping the context, keeping the mindset of, yes, I'm a learner, like beginner's mindset. I love the beginner's mindset, right?
Mm. Mm.
Beginner's mindset, like there's normalizing, yes, I am a beginner. I'm always a beginner. There's always something to learn and grow. Helps us
Yeah.
to not feel afraid or embarrassed or just nervous about trying it and not having it look perfect, but being willing to mess up a little and then like navigate that and correct it. And that's human interaction. That's the
Yeah.
whole of relationship. It's being able to be inside of that dance.
Yeah, absolutely. And embracing the imperfection, the rookie mistakes we will make, you know, not taking ourselves too seriously as we go about our interactions and relationships with people, and, the whole beginner mindset, as you say.
That is crucial. And I think, it's interesting. So we've talked about beliefs and sort of this idea of what maybe we've inherited versus what we've picked up along the way. We've talked about that playing into mindset and identity, whether it's a fixed mindset and fixed identity or a growth mindset, and continue to see ourselves as learner growers. We've talked about the emotional aspect of the gap, like the fear of looking
Mm.
bad or looking or doing it wrong or whatever, that those internal dialogues and conversations that come up that we either create ourselves or again that have been given to us or we've inherited from others or socialized to even. And then of course the
Mm.
habits and the skill sets, like the actual tools in the toolbox. I think
Mm.
that is a very comprehensive sort of like view of the categories of things that contribute to the knowing doing gap. Is there anything that we've missed or that you'd like for the audience to really kind of like take away from that?
You've summed it up beautifully. If there's one more we may want to add is, like any muscle that's overused, in some of the ways in which we are neurologically wired,
Mhm.
we may want to pause and check on opportunities where we can be intentional about leveraging neuroplasticity
Mm-hmm.
so that over time we help ourselves grow even more. So, a practical example I can think of is based on what we sought for, some people will immediately spot what's not working, what's not well. Other people might be fascinated by possibly people's faces more than other things.
Mm-hmm.
Others might be interested in the opposite of that. They
Mm-hmm.
might be interested in knowing, hmm, what's the process, what's the structure, what's the technology.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, we may miss each other, right? If we
Mm-hmm.
don't bring it into the context of where we are.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there are many opportunities there to notice what do I migrate towards naturally much easily, then surround ourselves with people who process and look at the world differently so
Yeah.
that from time to time we might ask ourselves, how might someone who thinks opposite from me look at the same
Yeah.
challenge or opportunity and tackle it? So that
Yeah.
helps us when we do diverse team building work.
I love that. I love that. So what I'm hearing is this opportunity to know ourselves and our brains and our preferences, and to
Mm,
recognize that everyone doesn't have our same as most no one really has our exact same preferences. Right? That everyone has
exactly.
their own filters, and recognizing that gives us the opportunity to not only for us to learn and stretch and grow and recognize our brain's neuroplasticity and capacity to shift and change and be flexible in our
Mm,
behavior, but also
mm,
to consider that when we're interacting with another. Like we all go through the learning stages at a different pace. And I think to
exactly.
have compassion for and
Yeah.
empathy for the different paces at which we go through the learning stages, the knowing to doing stages. And then just to even add to what you said, what are the resources that are needed? What are the resources? What are the resources that are maybe internally available that haven't been accessed yet?
Mm,
Or what are the resources external that need to be and support that need to be given to help people along the way? So that's something I think that just to plus one what you said, like to really add to that, because I think that's gold what you said. And then to to what we say piggyback. To piggyback
yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 That's really good. Well, I mean, I think this has been a great such a great conversation. It's been meaningful. And one of the things I love about podcasting is that, especially when I talk with people like you, who we share background, we share values, we share a lot of we have a shared language too, that
Yeah.
I get to hear different ways of speaking about different things, and I get to learn and pick up new things, and I get to be reminded of things that I'm like, oh yeah, like that one question. Is that all that you are? I know that question. And I was like, whoa, right? I need to bring that question back. you know? So I just appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I've also learned a lot and been reminded of so many things just from conversing with you, Maisha. There's a lot of material that is sitting either in our books or somewhere in our brains. We can always revisit to learn again and, sharpen our swords even more. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much for the conversation. It's been
You're so
quite
welcome.
inspiring.
So
Uh,
well. And you know what? This really underlines one more thing that contributes to narrowing the knowing doing gap, and that is staying in dialogue and staying connected with people who share your
Absolutely.
values. I think this was an amazing demonstration of how we narrow the knowing doing gap, even just in conversation, and you reminding me and me reminding you of things that we know, that we have resources. Like you said, I have books on the shelf that contain these, and that things that we've learned. And so being in dialogue is another really wonderful way to close that gap. So thank you for doing that for me today, and for gracing our guests from across the globe. I'm so excited that, some people in your community are going to get to hear this too.
Yay.
Because
Yay.
that
Absolutely.
yes, that impact is so important to me, those ripples, and it's just I'm honored. I'm honored to be able to, be able to be amplified in your community as well. So thank you for allowing that to happen by being here with me today.
I deeply appreciate you reaching out, building a connection for me with such a powerhouse of a sister and many communities that she's part of, So I absolutely hold the day you reached out quite dear in my heart, and I'm looking forward to deepening our collaborative work. So thank you for
Absolutely.
having me today.
Absolutely. Now, if people want to get in touch with you for consulting or for coaching, how might they do that? How might they do that?
Thank you. So, two simple ways they can connect with me on LinkedIn or drop me a message there. Those that may want to see me in the space of coaching or in the therapy world, I am on Psychology Today, which is a global platform.
Mhm.
All they need to search for is my name and country. And yeah, we can set up that way.
Awesome. Well, we will have all of that in the show notes as well. And, once again, thank you for being with me. And for the audience, take this episode and apply it. You all know me if you listen to me. I'm always about the application. How can you go and take what you have learned today and bring this into your families, your parenting, your organizations, your teams? How can you apply it? So take this and practice it, and then let us know how it goes. And the way that I'd love for you to do that is for you to leave a review. When you leave a review, what you're doing is essentially telling the people who listen to this podcast behind you the value that they're going to get. So I appreciate you subscribing. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leaving a 5-star review and letting us know a comment like, how did you take this learning and apply it? And passing it on. And so we always ask our listeners to share the episode, share it with a friend, a family member, a colleague, share it with at least 3 people, because this is how we ripple out these tools to others. All right. So until the next time we see you, go forth and practice, 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 and remap your minds and stay empowered.